bought a sleeping bag and I started like sleeping in my van and just like showering in truck stops. But I did come home with a few bucks, but it was a grind. So it was an eye opener that all conventions aren't created equal. Hey guys, welcome to Inside Comics with George McHale. Before we get started, if you could hit subscribe and tell a friend about it, that'd really help the channel grow. My guest today, I'm super excited to have him on, is my main man, Kevin Boyd. Thanks for being on the show, Kevin.
Hey George, thanks for having me on.
I'm
excited.
You are a co-founder of the Joe Shuster Awards here in Canada.
I am, yes. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about those awards?
Sure. Well, the awards were established back in 2004, and I think the first year we presented was 2005. Basically, Canadians work in the comic industry in North America and Europe and so forth, but we don't really have enough of an industry to generate our own awards. So the idea was to recognize Canadian creators who are working in the industry at large and draw attention to where the work they were doing. Because growing up, it mattered to me to know that people like John Byrne were Canadian. That was kind of cool. That the guy down the street was or not down the street, but in the country, was drawing X-Men. That was something that was really cool to me. So the idea that there were Canadians working in this industry and to draw attention to what they were doing.
Yeah. And, that's amazing. And so the nominees have been announced, and the winners. Do you know when the winners will be announced for this year?
So it's today's November 11th. So we're hoping by the end of next week we'll have the full announcement of the winners. So some of the juries are taking a little bit of time, and we obviously wanted to wait till some of the fallout for the U.S. election was finished up, because that was taking a lot of attention. So, yeah.
Cool. And will there be like an award ceremony this year? It's kind of difficult with COVID.
It is, with COVID and everything. I think we're going to probably just end up making an announcement in a press release of who the winners are, and then just pushing that on social channels.
So going back, like way back, you used to have a book that you would make called The Cat.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Way back, yeah.
Can you tell me the premise of that and when you worked on it?
So I worked on that when I was in high school. So gosh, that was, I think the first issue came out in 1986. So it shows you how old I am. So was that 34 years ago or something like that? So the comic could go out and vote if it wanted to and drink in bars. But the premise was the cat was an immortal warrior that he was constantly reborn, and at a certain point in his life would remember all of his previous lives. And I think his first life was set sort of in Britain in the 700 AD era and so forth. So he just sort of went through a series of adventures where people who were his former enemies were trying to destroy him. And he was trying to figure out why he was being reborn. And I think the first run, there were 8 or 9 issues, and then I tried to revive it in 1991. And this was, of course, back in the day where, I was photocopying the comic at my dad's office and stapling it in the basement, and it wasn't the professional quality self-publishing that we have these days. So,
yeah, I do feel lucky for all the kind of digital options and apps and things like that I can download to make my books. I imagine 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was a lot more difficult to make like an independent book.
Mm-hmm. And we were kids too. We were just trying to have fun. We were all art students and had ideas. And my friend, one friend did a book called Canadian Ace, and another had a character called Blackjack. And we had other friends who came in and contributed. We did an anthology title called Tales from the Hood, which was released before the movie by the same name. So I don't know if they stole the idea from us or not, but it it was kind of like a Tales from the Crypt kind of ripoff idea. So you had a narrator, and then you had different anthology stories where there was always a weird twist ending. So
I remember like when I was a kid, I drew like a gremlin with wings, and then that showed up in like Gremlins 2, and I was like, wait a minute. um,
Usually great minds think alike, right? So,
so after making your own comic books, you moved into having your own store and going to conventions. And
yeah, well, I mean, it was a long. I started out as a sort of a dealer, and I did local conventions selling pieces from my collection, and then I started going to cons, helping with stores like Paradise Comics. I would go to, which is a Toronto store. I used to go to conventions with them and help him with his booth. And it was there that I started meeting creators and other vendors and so forth. And we launched our own convention back in 2003, the Toronto Comic Con, which ran for 5 years, and it put us in direct competition with Fan Expo, which was the big dog in the area. And you know, eventually a little bit of conflict there. Eventually, I left Toronto Comic Con and went to work for Fan Expo, helping with their comic guests. Years after that, I opened a store in 2012 because a famous Toronto comic shop called Dragon Lady was closing, and we wanted to help keep the store alive for the customers. So we opened up my store, the Comic Book Lounge, in 2012. And we did that for 3 years, and that was a fun experiment. It was very event driven, so I had a lot of in-store signings and gallery shows and things like that. But the area, a lot of construction, lack of parking, TTC was down a lot, the transit, and the rent was going up, so we just opted to let it go. We let the lease go, and I switched to online, and then went back to work for Fan Expo doing the comic cast stuff, which is what I've been doing since.
So as a new creator, kind of myself, and kind of trying to get into the industry, I have a lot of confusion around variant covers. For me, it seems like it could be a cool option to kind of have an incentive for a store to, you know, pick up maybe a couple extra copies of your book to get that, you know, 1 in 10 variant or whatever it is. But on the other hand, too many covers kind of hurts the collectability of it if people can't even get them.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you know, as a store owner yourself, like, could you give me kind of like your insight on variant covers and what you think about that?
Well, generally it depends on what's being offered. So if let's say it's a 1-to-1 ratio variant, then as a store owner, I might order, you know, let's say 5 copies of cover A and 5 copies of cover B, and then see what happens. If it's there's a 1 in 10 offering, and I can order 10 and I know I'm going to sell them, I will order the 10 copies to get the 1 in 10 variant, and then I might put it on the wall for like a little bit more than what the regular cover edition would be. Often you have customers at your store who are interested in variants. So then you would say, if they want to hit the target, let's say there's a 1 in 25 variant or 1 in 50 variant, most stores, I mean, it depends on how large your store is, right, and how big your audience is. So you may not be willing to order 50 copies. So you might go to the customer and say, well, if you really want this 1 in 50 variant, then you'll have to pay the difference for me to order the extra copies for you to get them. And that was my whole approach to it. But generally, I was always wary of variants. If I knew I was going to hit the targets where I could order the variants, then I would do it and give it a try. And usually they sold well, but ordering 100 copies of, say, Star Wars #1, in order to get all these different variants, you end up with 80 copies of Star Wars 1 in your dollar bin eventually, because you're not necessarily selling all those other additional copies that you've ordered. And it helps artificially inflate the publisher's numbers as well. But some companies do offer just more expensive variants on I use an example. So there's a book called Cave Woman. So you can order specialty variants, but they'll just charge you a higher price point for them because they know they're going to have to make a special printing in order to get it. So you might pay $20 right off the bat, and that way the customer decides and you order for your customer. So.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like there's good and bad to variant covers, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's an audience for it, then you order for it. But I don't necessarily think you don't create an audience for just variants. There has to be a market or that's hungry for them.
So you've moved your store online now. What kind of things do you sell on the Comic Book Lounge?
Well, actually, I merged with another friend of mine's online business called All New Comics, and so he handles all the online orders for new books, graphic novels, so it's comics, trade paperbacks, hardcovers, art books, things like that. Anything that's in the Diamond Previews catalog, his customers can order. On his website, he'll basically list all the things that he thinks he can sell. So what I focused on was I assist him. I obviously give him my advice and recommendations and things like that. And he connected with a lot of my customers who transitioned over. So I focus on moving my old store inventory. So I have a lot, you can see probably some of it behind me. There's some various statues and things like that that are left over from my old retail shop. So I focus on selling those online through my business. But my core function for my business is to be an advisor for Fan Expo Canada and related shows, Calgary and Vancouver and Dallas, Orlando. So, and from there it's booking guests and working on comics content for those events.
So what makes a good guest for a comic book convention?
That's a tough call. We obviously have a lot of discussions on it. I'm looking for, at the biggest shows, we want the biggest names in the industry. Obviously, we want to bring in your Todd McFarlanes and your Jim Lees, the people that we know have a wide audience that want to come in and meet those people. But I mean, I'm dealing with comics on every level. So we also want to fill the space with people who are making comics in some level, whether it's those who are buying space and selling their own comics they're creating in Artist Alley, or people who are professionals who are working for books that are distributed by Diamond and maybe through Kickstarter or other venues, who we know that there's an audience for them and who are up and coming. So we obviously want to meet those creators. We want to support them. We want them to grow in the industry, and obviously remember us as being helpful. So, and support us down the line, because today's up and comer is tomorrow's superstar, right? So is the logic. So.
And what makes a bad comic book guest?
I can't think of anyone that's a bad. I mean, bad comic guest might be someone who just is never at their table, is surly with fans, and I can't really think of any examples offhand of anyone who I would consider to be a bad comic guest. I mean, there are people who, have had some issues and some challenges that have made them unhappy campers, basically. But for the most part, I think I can't think of anyone that's a bad comic guest. So,
yeah,
if that's a diplomatic answer.
No, I wasn't looking for anybody in particular. I was looking for like behavior,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an expectation that you'll be at your table meeting fans. I mean, it's to your benefit, obviously, if you're selling your work, you want to be there. But if you can't be bothered, then why am I giving up space that someone else could use, to greater effect?
So what are some of the kind of crazy or unexpected situations that have happened at Comic Cons when you're kind of in charge of talent relations there?
I don't know. I can't think of anything too crazy. I mean, in years past, there have been external events. Like one year at Fan Expo Canada, a raccoon climbed into a power converter nearby, and we lost power for a day. So, and that whole area of the city was without electricity. Yeah.
I've really enjoyed my time at the Fan Expo conventions. I was a little surprised last year I set out to kind of make comic books like my full-time career,
Mhm.
and I did 16 conventions last year. And previous to that, I had mostly done, the Fan Expo Cons. I'd done a few on the West Coast here, like
Mhm.
uh, in Seattle and Portland, but it was mostly the Fan Expo Cons. And I got on the road, and I booked a road trip for myself. I was going to do 4 conventions in 4 weeks,
Mhm.
and I thought they were all going to be great, like the Fan Expo ones and the other ones that I'd been to, and
Mhm.
they were very small, some of them, and it made it difficult, especially
Okay.
like I look at myself being a new guy as kind of an impulse buy. People are walking by and they haven't come to see me, but I tell them about my book, and maybe they're into monsters or whatever it is, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, great, and they pick it up. But that really relies on having some foot traffic.
Mhm.
If there's nobody there, it's really hard to sell books for myself. And I packed up my minivan because I'm a dad and I
Mhm.
have a minivan, and I got on the road and I drove out to like Columbus, Ohio, and Madison, Wisconsin, and kind of like small markets.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was rough. And I ended up just to come home with some money because I really didn't want to go on this road trip for a month and leave my wife and my daughter at home and come home with nothing. So
Mhm.
to make a few bucks, I like uh, bought a sleeping bag and I started like sleeping in my van
Oh.
and and just like showering in truck stops. But I did come home with a few bucks, but it was a grind. So it was an eye opener that all conventions aren't created equal.
No, I mean, I thank you. I mean, I think that says some good things about the shows that we're doing and the fans that we're bringing in. But yeah, I mean, there shows at all different types of levels, and some are just local community events, and some are big national events or regional events. So, and there are big companies like ours that put on shows all over North America. You know, Informa, which owns Fan Expo, puts on these shows. But there's also Repop that puts on theirs, and I think they put on very good shows as well. Big shows, a lot of foot traffic. Beyond that, you never know. There is Wizard, there is Ace. There are other companies that are producing bulk events across North America. But then there are also a lot of these regional cons, and some of them are great. Some of them are really comic focused, so they're really good. Think of like a Heroes Con or a Baltimore Comic Con. But then again, like pretty much every town has a Comic Con of some kind.
Yeah, a smaller convention that I did do is a Northern Fan Con in Prince George.
Oh yeah.
Um, not a huge crowd, but the people that were there were like super like passionate about comic books
Hmm.
and really keen. So yeah, it was definitely worth the trip up to Prince George, and I love those people up there.
I've heard good things about that, and there's like here in Ontario where I live, up in Timmins and in Sudbury, they have some great enthusiastic Comic Cons, and some creators live there. I think the fellows that create Oric of the North are based there, and they have a really loyal audience that they built up.
Um, so I saw online you have posted some pictures of like your personal collection.
Mm.
You've got just some amazing pieces. Um,
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
yeah. Um, can you tell me like a few of your favorites that you have?
Um, I wish I was more focused in what I collected. So my apartment is a little bit of a museum of this and that. So um, like I have a lot of books, obviously graphic novels and collections. I prefer collected editions and hardcovers over single issue comics these days. So I have I don't know, like 17 or 18 bookshelves of hardcovers and trades. Um, and then I have a really good art book library that I'm actually looking at in front of me by my TV, and I've got artist editions which reprint original art, and I have large size art books and books on comic strips and books on movies and film, a lot of that kind of stuff. I have a lot of statues and figures, and my current passion is hot toys, so the replicas of of Marvel movie actors and Star Wars characters and things like that. So I have a little bit of one of my bedrooms has been turned into a Hot Toys display room. And I buy a lot of original art over the years too. So I have bought a lot of original art, and not so much these days because the prices are up there. But I have something like 800 pieces of original art that I've accumulated over the years. So
800 pieces. That's amazing.
It just it ends up being volume, although you really only look at 40 or 50 on a regular basis. But sketches I've gotten from creators over the years, and I try to be supportive and buy artwork where I can of creators I like, and some of them have gone on to be very famous and have done a lot of big projects. So it's kind of cool to say I've got a Spider-Man sketch by this person who's gone on to be a big Marvel or DC creator or something.
Yeah, I know going to all those conventions last year, it was sure tempting to, to spend and to pick up things because like you're meeting all these different creators that, you've been a fan of for like so many years. And then it's like, oh, I should get something from them. And but it's kind of for me, it's a balancing act because as a writer, I need to kind of recoup some of my art costs that I've invested in my books. Yep. And so the convention is kind of a place for me to do that. So it's not really the most responsible thing to spend all my money on original art or, some cool comic books, but it's tough. It's tough for sure.
Well, for a long time, my focus was just getting the books that I already owned signed. So I would take the hardcovers that I owned and I would bring them to shows. And, if I knew that Stan Lee was there, I tried to get a book signed by Stan Lee.
So if someone wants to, so you have some of your things listed on your website. What is the website called? So
my website is comicbooklounge.com. Just all one word and then .com. And then I am also on Facebook as Kevin Andrew Boyd. And I sell a lot of Facebook Marketplace these days too, because I found I'm not a huge fan of eBay. eBay has some benefits, but Facebook Marketplace, the listings are free. You can renew as many times as you want, and you may get the occasional dumb question, but or someone that's you've got something up for $100 and they want it for 10, and
yeah.
Sorry, but we're too far apart there, but it happens. But you do what you can. It generates income. Get rid of some stuff. Like you see, I've got lots of.
If people are looking to, check out your collection and maybe purchase something, they'd go to comicbooklounge.com, or they could follow you on Facebook.
Follow me on Facebook. If you want on comicartfans.com, which is a great website for collectors of original comic art. I'm on there as Kevin Boyd as well. And most of my collection is on display there. So if you want to see what kind of art I own, it's there. So.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for being on the show. You've been just a huge supporter of my career, and I really appreciate you a lot and what you do for the industry. So thanks so much for being on Inside Comics, and catch you next time. Peace.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks.
Great.